Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you could join us today for this important conversation on accessibility, especially as we head into a pivotal year with new global standards and enforcement deadlines. A quick bit of housekeeping before we start. This session is being recorded, and we'll share the recording along with the key resources after the webinar. Please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A tab at any point. We have time at the end to address as many as we can. Next slide. My name is Sugandha, and I lead product marketing for accessibility at BrowserStack. I've spent the last few years working closely with product and sales teams, helping build and market our accessibility testing suite. Joining me today are two fantastic speakers, Partha, the product manager at BrowserStack, and Eva, our guest accessibility specialist. Eva and Partha, why don't you take a quick minute to introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Eva Hazy. I'm a senior quality engineer and technical program manager at FanDuel. I'm also a certified professional in accessibility core competencies by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And currently, I assist in leading our internal working group that's focused on digital accessibility for web and mobile applications. So thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, Partha this side. I am part of the product team at BrowserStack Web Accessibility. I've been with BrowserStack for the last 3 years now, and out of that, I have been working on accessibility for the last 1 year. As part of the team, we get to interact with a lot of real customers and get to solve customer problems in the accessibility testing space. And we help organizations achieve accessibility compliance by building tools. Yeah, that's about me. Excited to have you all here for our webinar.
All right, thank you both. All right, moving on, let's take a quick look at what we'll cover today. First, we'll zoom into why accessibility is more urgent than ever in 2025. Then we'll decode what's changing on the regulatory front, especially with EAA and the ADA Title II. We'll highlight the most common accessibility failures that teams are struggling with. And finally, we'll get into what a realistic roadmap to compliance looks like and see a live demo on how BrowserStack can support you. Let's get started. Eva, let's start with a big picture. Why is this conversation more important than ever in 2025? What's changed and what should teams be paying attention to?
Absolutely. So I wanted to start by just defining this. So digital accessibility is defined simply as websites, apps, tools, all technologies that are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them. So in an ideal world, all people can obtain the same information. We're emphasizing autonomy for each user. So looking at statistics here, to get an idea of kind of the potential number of users we're talking about, we have an estimated 1.3 billion people, or 16% of the world's population, living with some form of disability. 1 in 6 adults worldwide, and much closer to 1 in 4 in the United States, are experiencing accessibility barriers. And even an update to the statistic here, a survey in the Netherlands found that actually almost half of iOS users and over half of Android users now have 1 or more accessibility settings activated. And before moving on, I did want to note that it is important to see that historically, even though disabled people have been considered less of a priority in policymaking, we are seeing major changes to that now. Because we are starting to have more of an agreed upon definition of disability and are able to collect more census data. So these numbers are rising all of the time. And we can go to the next slide. So homepages of the top 100 million websites have over 51 million distinct accessibility errors, excuse me. So this represents an average of 51 errors per page. So these are specifically the types of errors that have notable end user impact and a very high likelihood of being conformance failures. So this statistic was actually gathered by WebAIM as part of the 2025 report. So this is the most recent report on accessibility of the top 1 million homepages. BrowserStack actually helped partially fund some of this research since it is so important to assess these things on an annual basis. But right now, we're seeing both an increase in enforcement of accessibility and also in legislation for accessibility, but also a shift in our user expectations. So these statistics are highlighting that one of the biggest reasons for becoming compliant is that people with disabilities represent such a large consumer market. In fact, they are the third largest market segment in the United States. Globally, people with disabilities are estimated to represent over $1 trillion in spending power. This was reported in 2022. It's even higher today. A second reason for compliance, lower operational costs. This is also including audits that have to be performed if accessibility isn't built in from the beginning. There's risk management. This ties into two, but it's important that companies know that accessibility has to be built into the process of creating products, because accessibility lawsuits are on the rise. So inaccessible platforms that deny equal access are grounds for opening oneself up to these types of lawsuits that we're going to talk about with some of our enforcement. And making products accessible, just lastly, like boosts brand value and reputation. So users with disabilities are going to be vocal advocates for companies that make efforts in these areas.
Well, yeah, thank you, Eva. That was an important conversation to have. Let's get into the specifics of what you talked about, right? We know 2025 brings some of the biggest accessibility enforcement milestones in recent years, from the EA June's deadline in the EU to new expectations under ADA Title II in the US. Teams can't afford to treat accessibility as just a nice to have anymore. But before we jump into the regulatory landscape, let's take a pulse on where teams are with the EA deadline just around the corner. All right, thank you. I think everybody is interested in, they rely mainly on development and QA efforts, but I see some people have not allocated a budget or have started addressing compliance, and some of them are exploring solutions but haven't started implementing them. Eva, can you help us walk through the regulatory landscape? What's coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the 2025 enforcement of the EAA. So the EAA is a new directive. It has set out common rules for accessibility products and services across EU member states. This includes people with disabilities and also the elderly. And these must meet what we call WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, by 2025, 2.1 level AA. So this applies to a really wide range of systems. This includes personal devices, public services, e-commerce sites. Service providers don't even necessarily have to be present in the European Union for the EAA to apply to them. So an example would be like a US-based social media service that's accessible in France. This will be caught by the EAA's provisions. So something to keep in mind there. And we can go to the next one. So who's it applicable to? Here we have examples of these and also their exceptions. So this is kind of number dependent interpersonal communication services that, like this is SMS, which is number-based interpersonal communication service, an information society service, audiovisual media service, including video streaming. And then exceptions to this would be things like providers with under 10 employees and turnover below 2 million pounds may be exempt from the EAA, or exemption applies if compliance imposes major changes or undue burden. So that's also, gray area there. A company would have to prove undue burden and major changes. So getting ahead of it, smarter for businesses. And we can go to the next slide. So here's our timeline for this. June 2019 was when this was adopted originally. June 2022, the member states needed to translate and adopt the directive into their national laws. Our upcoming date of June 28th, 2025 is full compliance. So this will be, in addition, services placed on the market and contracts entered into before this date of June 28th, 2025, there will be an additional transition period of a few years. And this will be for things like pre-existing services and contracts, but we'll need to start taking necessary steps. So while this might seem like there's a little bit of time to adjust, companies really need to start preparing now, because this legislator deliberately has chosen to give companies time to put measures in place so that we can all ensure that we have compliance during the complexity of our these upcoming regulations. And our next piece of legislation is the 2026 enforcement of the Americans for Disabilities Act Title II. So this was originally designed to ensure that state and local government services, including things like public universities, are accessible to people with disabilities. This means like all digital content. So this is websites, mobile apps. These all must be designed so that people can access them regardless of their disability or their use of assistive technology. And we can go to the next slide. So we have quite a few examples of who this really does apply to. This will apply to state and local government entities, the specific enforcement of Title II. So examples might be county portals, city platforms, ebook platforms, municipal websites, any website accessibility for schools and universities, courts, DMV, things like that, public transit. The rules scoping for this is going to impact content and functionality such as online documents, online forms and applications, cloud services, portals that people use internally, digital kiosks, video, multimedia, things like that. Exceptions here are going to be things like archived content, third-party content, pre-existing documentation, password-protected cord content. So these will require careful documentation if they don't absolve entities of providing access. So there will be an expectation in the future to provide alternative means for even these exceptions. And then on the next slide, we have our timeline for the ADA Title II. So this was originally signed on July 26, 1990. It was the world's first comprehensive civil rights law for people with disabilities, period. And for April 26, 2026, there will be compliance required for public entities serving populations of 50,000 or more. And the following year on the same day, public entities serving populations of less than 50,000. And special district governments, in addition to what we have on the slide, the compliance deadline will also be that April 26, 2027.
Yep. It's time to act now, right? That's what Eva and everybody is echoing. You need to start working on this now. Now we move on to the next topic, which is what are the most common accessibility issues that can happen on your website or your mobile app? We will look at the top accessibility issues that teams are facing today. I just want to highlight here that we just released the 2020. Can you go back to the previous slide, maybe? Yes. We just released the 2025 Web Accessibility Coverage Report from BrowserStack. In this report, we analyzed real-world issues across 1,000 enterprise web pages. The findings were eye-opening. We identified 42,000 accessibility issues, many of which directly impacted usability and legal conformance. What were some of the most frequent failures? Things like poor contrast, missing labels, broken keyboard navigation, issues that disproportionately affect users with disabilities and are directly flagged in WCAG. Eva will help us walk through some of the most common violations now.
Okay, so for our first example, this is success criterion number 1 for us. This is going to be 1.4.3. So this is minimum contrast. So you can see an example here. The intent of this criterion is essentially to provide enough contrast between text and background. So this can be done a couple ways. It can be done with sizing. It can be done with color and hue. But this is really so people with vision impairments or contrast perception impairment can read text without the use of assistive technology. So a few things to keep in mind here is that there's different types of visual impairments that can affect and impact contrast sensitivity. So some people might need more light-dark contrast regardless of color. Others, perhaps somebody who is colorblind, color would have no effect. And so the inability to distinguish certain shades of color would not negatively or positively affect for them. Contrast would then be calculated and remediated in such a way that color is not a factor. So I wanted to bring that up because in this example, we would think about things like sizing there. So the visual presentation of text, and just going back real quick to that one, should have a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. We have some exceptions here, large text. once you get to a certain size, you're fine. Incidental text, which could be purely decorative text, and then things like logo types. So if this is like a brand name, there's no contrast requirement. And we can go to the next slide. The next success criterion is going to be WCAG 4.1.2. This is name, role, and value. So the goal for this criterion is such that people using assistive technology can understand all of their components. This is really specific to assistive technology. So the intent here is to ensure that that technology can gather all of the appropriate information about, activate, and kind of keep up to date on the status of user interface controls in the content that it's viewing. So what you would do here is you would give your components the correct roles, the correct values, and the correct names if you were performing remediation. And why it's really important is that assistive technology can only work when the code is correct, basic. And when standard controls from accessible technologies are used, this process ends up being very straightforward. So an example here could be an accessible API. That could be like a Java applet using an accessibility API defined by the language. So that is 4.1.2, and we can move to the next one. Okay, so number 3 is going to be focus visible, which is a criterion 2.4.7. So this goal, as you can kind of see by this example, is users knowing which element has the keyboard focus. You can see these borders, right? So the way to remediate this would be to ensure that each item that receives focus has this visible indicator and border. Without this, sighted keyboard users may not be able to operate the page. And so we want the person to know which element has the keyboard focus. And examples here, as you're seeing besides this, would be text fields receiving focus where a vertical bar could be displayed or a visible border is displayed. Remediation, for an example, could be things like using script to change the background color or border of an element that has focus. And our next example is 2.1.1. This is keyboard. So the goal here is that everything can be done with the keyboard except for freehand movements. So remediation for this would be to make sure that pointer actions all have keyboard equivalents. This is really important because a lot of people rely on keyboard interfaces, mobility impaired people, vision impaired people. This is one of the more important ones. So as examples, maybe a drawing program. I mean, we have an example here that you can see. The highlight shows all elements that were skipped in the tab order. So other examples could be a drawing program that allows users to create and size and position and rotate objects, drag and drop features, things like that. So remediation here would look like ensuring keyboard controls, using things like HTML form controls and links, or ensuring correct tab and reading order when you have PDF documents in your content. And our last example for this is WCAG 1.1.1, which is non-text content. So the goal of this criterion is that non-text information is available to more people. So what we do is we create a text alternative for visual and auditory content. You're seeing here this image, but it has a caption that describes it for people who aren't able to see it. This is to essentially make sure that information is conveyed by non-text content accessible through the use of what we call text alternatives. So text alternatives are going to be the primary way for making information accessible because those can be rendered through any sensory modality. That's, for example, visual, audio, or tactile modalities. And that can match the needs of the user. So this allows information to be rendered in a bunch of ways using a variety of user agents. For example, a difficult one here would be CAPTCHA, but if you were to make it accessible, you could require 2 different forms of CAPTCHA on a given site to ensure that most people with disabilities will find a form that they can use. An example you're seeing here is this photo. maybe a linked thumbnail image, things like that. So remediation kind of specifically at a developer level could be using things like an ARIA label to provide labels for objects, or using the body of the object element.
Cool. If we can go back to the previous slide. Yeah. Thank you, Eva. As Eva highlighted, these are the most frequent success criteria violations that we analyzed in our web accessibility coverage report. If you want to know more about the top success criteria and how many of these can be automatically detected, do read our report. It's free to download and read. My colleague has put the link in the chat box, so do read that out. I also saw the comment, one comment, if this slide deck would be available to download after the presentation. There is a chat, there is a blog which kind of lists all of these top 15 success criteria along with the images or the description explaining those images, those violations, as well as, remediation steps for them. I will also link that blog here so that you can read that out. Thank you. Right, moving on now for the big question. For teams wondering where to start and how to make real progress, what should the roadmap look like? Is it about testing more? Is it about starting early, changing workflows? How can teams move from awareness to action? Yeah, Eva, all yours.
Absolutely. So kind of at the outset, I do want to say that it's clear, especially for those of us who work with accessibility, that organizations do not go out of their way to avoid digital accessibility and inclusion. We understand it can be really challenging to prioritize this amongst evolving technology, amongst evolving legislation. So kind of developing a digital accessibility compliance plan is pretty essential at this point, I think, for all companies, especially government agencies, as a result of these specific legislative changes. So some kind of classic steps to form this accessibility checklist we have shown here. I'm going to go a little bit into more detail, but one would be kind of understanding the rules requirements based on upcoming legislation and creating kind of an inventory of your digital assets, right? So cataloging everything digital. This is going to be third-party tools, apps, docs, websites, and also, similarly importantly, figure out when you need to fully comply. Think about how much time it's going to take to reach that full compliance. Sometimes there are multiple points of auditing. So our second point here would be thoroughly auditing. So conducting a comprehensive government website accessibility audit. This is going to combine automated scans with manual expert review and assistive technology. BrowserStack actually has a variety of testing tools my company uses for exactly this, both for manual testing and automated testing. And I want to pause here and just kind of throw out some questions that can help people get started. Because I think one of the common questions is like, we see this, but really, like, what are the first questions you ask yourself? As an entity, think about how many websites does my company have? Like, how many web pages are in those websites? What type of content is there? Is it videos? Is it images? Is it HTML content? Is it PDFs? Do we post on social media? What platforms are we using? Are there other places that are publicly recognized as places where our content is posted? What mobile apps are we using? Who posts on these, websites that we're here on? All these people need to become stakeholders that are involved in remediation and accessibility. Another important question is what third-party vendor content is made available at the state and local level here. So just kind of some first questions to get the ball rolling, to start putting together this inventory and audit. The next step would be prioritization of planned remediation. So everyone needs to create a realistic phased plan based on your audit findings. So that audit does need to come first. Establishing policy internally. So creating an accessibility plan and statement, create those internal policies, including accessible procurement policy government that teams can use. So have a team, have an accessibility specialist consultant, have internal stakeholders that are trained as well. And that moves me into training staff and managing procurement. Determine who's going to be part of compliance, because ensuring that all relevant staff are aware of this role that they will play in complying with these new rules, you start to create this culture of accessibility in your company. It is really important to kind of clearly identify who is responsible for what, so that there is no confusion here. So educating relevant internal staff is really important. For this, also updating contracts to require the WCAG 2.1 conformance, particularly scrutinizing accessibility for public sector tools. And the next step would be here is choosing partners wisely. Select accessibility experts that are proficient in comprehensive auditing. So as part of our auditing process, as I mentioned earlier, we've utilized tools like BrowserStack's app life testing, Percy, which is specific for accessibility testing. We do both manual and automated, because automated by itself will not catch all of the errors. Manual is still very important. Pointers that I wanted to mention here, specific for people in quality like myself. The concept of shift left is very important here. We want to start with the very beginning of the software development lifecycle and bake accessibility into that. So that accessibility in the conversation should be part of design, should be part of product. It should be part of development workflows, quality testing. Quality should not be where the problems are found. These should be talked about right at the beginning of this process. And this is where companies have been successful when they shift left. Automated versus manual testing, as I just mentioned, you really should focus on both. We have better and better automated testing services, but manual still will catch those edge cases. And it will teach people how to find these things earlier in the process. Encouraging internal ownership, that's part of training staff and managing procurement, but truly having internal stakeholders in every department that are educated in this and find it important is part of success. Creating checklists like design, code, content, and testing checklists for each stakeholder. And things like agile integration, like how to embed testing into biweekly sprints and things like that. I did want to point out a quick warning to companies who have previously thought that those like overlay widgets for websites is kind of a quick fix. They are not quick fixes. They do not fix underlying code. They are not very reliable against accessibility lawsuits. And more times than not, they have actually added barriers. I wanted to note here that the most prominent accessibility overlay provider, which is called Accessib, was actually fined $1 million by the FTC for false advertising. So there's further info you can find on why to not use an overlay, but to truly bake accessibility into your website development from the beginning. Just to end there, we understand that this path does require commitment, but all of this results in a more inclusive, equitable, and very legally sound digital presence that truly serves all the different users for your company.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Eva. This roadmap is a great starting point, and I'm sure everybody in the webinar would appreciate it. As Eva mentioned about the importance of shifting left, at BrowserStack, we've been working closely with teams to help embed accessibility across the SDLC, from design to testing to monitoring. If you haven't explored our, can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. If you haven't explored our accessibility testing suite yet, we'd love to show you what's possible and how it fits into your existing workflows. We have Partha who will show you what I mean in action.
So thank you, Sugandha. What Eva talked about in the roadmap to accessibility compliance for either EAA or ADA, one of the key aspects which comes into play is which tool you are using for accessibility testing. Now, most tools in the market are fragmented and also do not provide a very good coverage of accessibility issues. That's where BrowserStack comes in. So we provide a very comprehensive accessibility testing suite. It will help you meet compliance for any WCAG-based accessibility regulation. So this includes both ADA as well as EAA. Can we move to the next slide? So what you see here is an overview of our accessibility testing suite. We provide tools for manual testing, monitoring, as well as test automation. All of our tools are powered by the Spectra rule engine, which is our internally built rule engine. In terms of rule coverage, Spectra is one of the leading rule engines in the market. So to put it into context, we cover around 37 WCAG success criteria. Compared to that, most paid tools in the market covered only 30 success criteria, while free tools cover only 20. So with our tools, you can expect to detect far more number of real issues in accessibility. Now, if we look at what tools we provide as part of our test suite, in the manual testing, we provide a browser extension on Chrome. On the extension, we have a workflow analyzer tool, which allows you to manually scan any workflow on your web page. We also provide screen reader. These screen readers are available on real devices, which we host on our data centers. We have screen readers for all the major operating systems, including Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS. Finally, in manual testing, we also support guided tests or assisted tests. So these are semi-automated tests, which are usually quite complex to do. For example, keyboard accessibility, interactive elements, forms, etc. Now moving on to monitoring, we provide both on-demand scans as well as recurring scans. With recurring scans, you can continuously monitor the accessibility health of your website by scheduling a scan. You can also scan multiple URLs at once. So we provide the functionality of site extracting URLs from your sitemap, or you can also use our website crawler. Lastly, we have a PDF scanner in monitoring, which is in the alpha stage. This is quite important because both EAA and ADA mandate that any PDF file or any document as such in your website should also be accessible. So this is where it comes in handy. Lastly, in terms of test automation, we provide a SDK integration for integrating your existing functional tests into our accessibility tool. So you can start running accessibility tests from your existing tests with minimal code changes. You can also integrate it into your CI/CD pipeline. One more thing I would like to highlight is we have a new offering called low-code automation. So this is for helping you automate accessibility tests, even if without the need for coding. So this was a broad overview of the tools we provide as part of our suite. Can we move to the next slide? I would like to highlight some AI features which we provide as part of our tool. So to complement our rule engine, we support like AI-powered detection as well as remediation, which we have embedded into our tools. Firstly, one of the features which is already available is AI-based alt text recommendation. So as part of this, we provide recommendation for image alt text violations. So any non-compliant image, our AI will be able to suggest what should be the right alt text. Another functionality which is upcoming is AI-based remediation. So this is helpful for developers who are trying to fix accessibility issues. So using AI, we will provide some very context-specific suggestions for how to fix these issues. That was what I wanted to highlight. We can move to the next section. So I'd like to quickly show you a demo of how our product works in action. So what you are looking at is our web-based accessibility dashboard homepage. So the first tool I will just highlight is the website scanner. So if you have a web page you want to run a static accessibility scan on, let's take this demo website, for example. You can just add this to our website scanner. We also allow you to add multiple URLs. For example, if you have a sitemap from which you would like to extract URLs, you can do so. Or we also provide a website crawler. If you want to crawl your website and add multiple URLs, you can do that also. Once you have added the URLs, you can configure how you want to run the scan. So we provide both one-time on-demand scans and also recurring scans. Now, recurring scans can be daily, weekly, or monthly. This will help you like track the accessibility of your website over time. Some other key features we have is one is we also support local testing. So for example, if you have lower environments like dev, staging environment, which you also want to test, we support that. You can also test pages which are behind behind a login page, or also behind a cookie consent banner. So these configurations we have available. Once you have configured your scan, you can just start the scan. Let's say I want to run for this page. I can just create scan. Once you have run your scan, you will be able to see the results on our dashboard. So let's take a look at one of the reports. So this is how our accessibility report looks like. We'll just let it load. Yeah. So a quick glance, we have so since it's a recurring scan which I have opened, you can take a look at comparison of reports, the issues which have been detected compared to the last scan. We also provide an accessibility score, which gives a very high level highlight of what is the health of your website overall. We also have a split of your issues in terms of severity. So let's say, for example, here we have 31 critical issues for this website. We also have a issue trend. So over time, you can track how the various recurring scans are showing the accessibility health for your website. Now, let's say if you want to look at a particular issue, you can go to the All Issues tab. For example, if I want to look at images which don't have a meaningful alt text, so you can click on this particular issue and it will load the issue details. To help you debug, we have a very helpful feature for showing screenshot. So using the screenshot, you can identify which element this particular issue happened in. You can also see other details like what is the CSS selector or the HTML snippet of that particular element. One more sort of very cool functionality we have here is this particular issue is enhanced using our AI functionality. So what I mean by that is this, here we are providing AI-based suggestion on what the correct alt text should be. So it takes context from your website and provides you, so you don't have to like do this for yourself. So it provides a very context-specific suggestion. So this was how you can debug any accessibility issue you have. We have other functionalities like raising this report to a project management tool like Jira or Trello. We also have functionality to share the report via a private or a public link. As I had shown, you can compare this report to any past scan runs, and you can also export this as a CSV. So this was a quick glance at our website scanner product. What I will go through next is our manual testing product. So for manual testing, we provide an extension on Google Chrome. So it's available on the Chrome Web Store and you can download it. Once you have installed this, let's say I want to do a manual scan of this page. So you can just fire up your dev tools and you will be able to access the accessibility toolkit. So the manual scan would be a workflow analyzer. So let's start a workflow analyzer scan. So what this does is it will start scanning whichever page you are on. And a very helpful functionality here is it scans any changes in your page also. It's not a static scan. So let's say if any change happens on your website, so it will also start scanning any new page states. So this will help you test a workflow. So I can just keep doing my workflow and it will keep updating the accessibility issues as and when it is detected. Once I'm done with my workflow, I can just stop the scan and save the report. And I will have the report available to me for debugging or let's say raising it forward to my team. So this was our workflow analyzer tool. So the next tool I'll talk about is the assisted test. So assisted test is a semi-automated test which helps you test some of the difficult to test, some of the tests which are very difficult to do manually. So for example, a keyboard assisted test will allow you to tab through the entire web page. So as you can see, this is a semi-automated test which will tab through your entire web page, and you can detect things like, let's say, a particular element is not keyboard accessible, or let's say the tabbing flow is getting stuck somewhere. So with this semi-automated test, you can detect such issues. We also provide assisted tests for interactive elements, modals, forms, images, and layouts. Now going back to our manual testing view. So lastly, we also provide screen readers. So let's say you want to do a screen reader test on VoiceOver on Mac. So you can just fire a new screen reader session. So so it will launch a real device which is housed in our data centers, and you can launch the screen reader on this in real time. So let's say you want to test your screen reader on this particular website. You can enable the screen reader and it will start narrating.
VoiceOver utility, page. VoiceOver utility, window, utility categories, table, Safari, developer link, real device cloud. You are link, company-wide licenses. You are current VoiceOver off.
So using this, you can do a voice, like a screen reader test for manual screen reader test for your website. So these were some of the manual tools which we provide as part of our extension. I'll move on to the next section, which is automated tests. So as part of automated tests, we provide a very comprehensive coverage of a lot of the common frameworks such as Selenium, Playwright, and Cypress. In terms of language, we provide coverage for Java, Node, Python, and C#. We have SDKs for all of these frameworks, and we provide very comprehensive documentation on how to, like, let's say, integrate these SDKs into your functional test suites. We also provide sample repos, which will help you onboarding. Now, once you have integrated any of your functional tests, you can start seeing all the results for your tests directly on our accessibility dashboard. So let's say I have run this build from my CI/CD. Similar to what we saw earlier, you will see a report for the scan which you did. Now again, similar to our workflow, this will also test any page states which are happening during the test. So not just static scans. Another thing here is if you have multiple test cases during your build, then you can see a test case level report also. So this was our accessibility automation tool. Next up is our PDF scanner. So we provide functionality to both scan a file from your own machine, or if you have a PDF link URL, that also you can provide, and our tool will scan that PDF. So this is what a PDF report looks like. We follow the PDF UA guideline, which is most common for PDF document accessibility. We highlight on the PDF document itself, whichever issue is there, so it helps you debug. We also provide a very easy steps for you how to fix these issues. So this was our PDF scanner tool. We also provide export functionality using which you can download a CSV report. And similarly, you can report a bug on Jira or share this internally. So this was most of the tools I wanted to cover. One more aspect which I will just gloss over is we have APIs for all of our tools. So for example, if you want to create a scan for your website scanner, you can use this API directly, and a report will get generated on our dashboard. Similarly, if you want to get reports from our dashboard using an API, we also have reports API with which you can fetch all the accessibility details for your website. Yeah, so this is what I mainly wanted to cover as part of the demo. I hope this was helpful. I'll hand it back to Sugandha.
Yep.
Let us know if you have any questions. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Partha. That was super insightful. All right, thank you. I think we can open it up for questions now. There are a few ones coming in already. So most of them are product related. So Partha, a question for you. How are the issues organized or presented in the report that we just saw on the reporting dashboard?
So, if you want to look at issues in the report, we organize it based on components, for example. So if you have a element or a CSS component you are using across your website, it will get uh, grouped on basis of component. It also gets grouped based on pages. Like let's say you are scanning multiple pages in your workflow. The issues will also get grouped on the pages. Yeah, these are broadly.
Yeah, cool. All right, next question. Does your accessibility test automation require using BrowserStack's cloud infra? And can we run it on external cloud services?
No, so you can you can use our accessibility automation for both infra on BrowserStack as well as external. So if you are using any third-party cloud service provider also, you can just integrate our SDK and you can test on this third-party provider. Yeah.
Awesome, cool. Sorry. Do you support testing on mobile browsers like Chrome on Android and Safari on iOS?
So currently we support desktop browsers only. Our extension is available on Chrome browser on desktop, but we plan to support both Chrome on iOS, Chrome on Android, as well as Safari on iOS during this year itself. So it's in our upcoming roadmap.
Got it. Can I consolidate multiple scan reports done separately to create a combined report and share it across with my team?
Yes, currently our tool does support that. So for any scan you do, for example, a workflow scan, you can consolidate multiple reports. If you are doing scan part by part, you can consolidate up to 10 reports into a single report. Yep.
Got it. Yeah, awesome. And do you also support VoiceOver and JAWS screen readers on iOS?
Currently, we support VoiceOver on iOS. JAWS is not yet supported, but it is in our roadmap for this year.
Got it. We also have one question on chat. Do I encourage people to please use the Q&A box for the questions? Do all apps need to be responsive across all devices? Because some government applications are used by internal government users and are not usually used on a phone or a tablet.
Eva, do you want to take
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, this I think the larger answer is that it does depend. This is why having a certified professional consultant come in and perform an audit would be helpful, because you want to be very careful about exceptions to the rule. I don't know if they're not using a phone or a tablet, what specific device they're using, but I would say that compliance does have oversight with internal government users. It is not just end users, it is also internal users of the content, because internal users can have disabilities. So it is very important that it affects all. But again, this is why it's good to have that audit and start asking those first questions. But these are great questions.
Got it. Awesome. There's one more. The content, again, please don't use the chat box to chat to ask questions, use the Q&A box, but the content in our product is proprietary. If we use the browser extension from within BrowserStack, is our content still secure, or are there other precautions that we should take for conducting tests and keeping content secure?
Sugandha, can you repeat that question?
Yes. The content in the person's product is proprietary. If they use the extension from our product, is their content still secure?
Yes, absolutely. So we don't, we sort of have like security and compliance in place. So your content won't be at any risk when you're using our extension. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Partha. I think we have one or two more. Can we simulate screen reader testing on our website using automation?
Yes. So right now, we just provide manual screen reader testing, like I showed. So it's not immediately available, but it's in the pipeline. So we will be supporting it in the coming month. So screen reader automation will also be available.
Awesome, awesome. And one last question. Do you provide services for auditing and VPAT report generation? Yes, we do.
Yes, Sugandha already answered, but yes, we provide services for auditing and all other professional services for ensuring your end-to-end accessibility compliance.
Awesome. I think we're at time. Keep an eye out for the follow-up email with the session recording, the coverage report, and more resources that we shared. Until next time, take care. Bye for now. And thank you so much, Eva and Partha, for taking out the time to address our audience.